At last, actual chaos has arrived in the Gilded Age. As we go toward the second half of the season, Sunday night's episode gave us all of that and more: light poisonings, prohibited marriages, and mobs with torches. The news that the Russells will be having a royal dinner with the Duke of Buckingham, Ben Lamb, at their estate has caused quite a stir in Newport. Church Jack Gilpin, who is treating the dinner as seriously as everything else in the world, since he knows he's essential to the Russells' goal to make a slow but steady progress in this social rat race, is receiving Bertha's directions and demands. Known as Team Downstairs at the Russells, he, Mrs. Bruce Watson, and Chef Josh Borden are the main players. Those beneath the stairs, also known as the muscles beneath the Russells, are like the Fantastic Four of house staff or the Ninja Turtles of housekeeping. And I'll admit that I have a very involved interest in whatever they do. The good news is that even the Russell family's own flesh and blood is not skilled at keeping things running smoothly. Thus, they are crucial to maintaining order. Due to his old lady Mrs. Blaine's, Laura Benanti, breakup, Larry Russell is now getting wasted in public. Mrs. Russell kicks him out of the house and sends him back to New York so he won't interfere with her lavish celebration. When Aunt Ada, Cynthia Nixon, returns to New York, she at last tells Mary and Oscar and Aunt Agnes about her engagement to Reverend Ford. Agnes is obviously displeased, but she's so much so that she says she won't even be at the wedding and even bans Oscar, the only male blood related of Ada, from escorting her down the aisle. Agnes tells Ada, "You're making terrible mistakes. Can you tell me anything about marriage? You're a spinster, and you've always been a spinster," she continues, lowering the knife even farther. Ada, who has spent her entire life with this woman, accepts the brutality that is being shown while Marion is shocked by it. She remarks, "You're right, I have a great deal to learn, which I'm looking forward to. Don't ruin it for me, please." Agnes, though, keeps ruining it. Agnes has Bannister retract his congrats after he informs her that she is engaged. "My apologies, Miss Ada, but I must cancel my congratulations," he says, sounding like a 19th century equivalent of, "You have unsent a text message." Ada answers calmly, "I totally understand, Bannister." Even though this is a really sad turn of events that gets worse throughout the episode, some of the best comedy this show has to offer comes from the melodrama of it all, and Agnes's huffy exit from the conversation when she says, "My head feels like a beating drum." I believe there would be a lot more tension if we didn't believe Agnes would finally change her mind. Agnes, however, visits the Reverend before she does, pleading with him to call off the wedding. The Reverend doesn't change his position in spite of her tears as she sobs that Ada is the only family she truly has left in this world because she knows Oscar and Marion would eventually leave her. "The will of God is evident," he informs Agnes. "Man shall cleave to his wife and leave his father and mother, and they shall become one flesh." Agnes gets up to leave because she dislikes being outdone, especially by God. "Are you done talking?" he inquires. She responds, "Now have you given God the final say?" The Russells' party in Newport is going to be so significant and large-scale that they will have to borrow workers from other pals. The footman of Mamie Fish, together with 5 other cooks from different houses, one of whom was Schneider from the Wintertons' kitchen. You can criticize Bertha Russell endlessly for being a social climber who occasionally acted petty toward her peers and superiors. But you also have to recognize the fact that she treats her staff with kindness and respect, and they return the kind. Mrs. Winterton appears to have a similar rapport with her staff, a delicious evil streak and a contempt for order and civility, as evidenced by her allowing her chef, Schneider, to sabotage the large meal that will be served to the Duke and the other guests, with additional assistance from Winterton's longtime friend Peter and the butler of the Russells. Although Maud Beaton is fond of Oscar Van Ryn, she's used to being pursued for her money and believes Oscar is likely doing exactly that. Maud Beaton is beginning to snoop around New York to find out what other people think of him. She also brings up Oscar's fondness for Gladys Russell in a conversation with Aurora Fane. Aurora replies, "You surely don't want a man who has never been interested in a woman before." Oscar may have the best of intentions, but it appears that he has feelings for Maud beyond simply her cash account. He invites her to Ada's wedding, which he intends to attend in spite of his mother's objections, and he also begins assisting her with her business matters. Though the public is unaware of it, Maud's father, who is actually Jay Gould, has been employing her as a middleman in many of his financial dealings, and she has approached banker Oscar for clarification. The guys who work with Maud find the situation awkward because of the secrecy surrounding both their genealogy and their business. However, Oscar views it as a kind of insider trading chance. knowing the specifics of some extremely profitable agreements regarding the building of a new railway. He slips between the cracks to make an investment in them. Peggy Scott, Denise Benton, is continuing traveling with T. Thomas Fortune in Alabama, where she is covering the Tuskegee Institute's new dormitory for Booker T. Washington. As her journey comes to an end, she finally understands what it means to be black in the South after World War II, when she accepts the invitation to go to the restaurant run by the mother of one of the young men she has been interviewing. Two white men enter during their dinner and start harassing the restaurant owner in a drunken manner. While they're there, Peggy discovers with unease that her black hostess and this white man have the same last name, Stewart. Peggy gasps. Being molested by someone who used to be her owner is something that, as a northerner, she does not have to deal with. Fortune, who had been a slave himself and has grown more resolute after living in the North for years, confronts them and initiates a battle. Once the men band together and pursue them, he and Peggy are forced to escape for their life. Feeling the rush of the moment together, Peggy and Fortune share a kiss as soon as they know they're safe. I'm happy for Peggy that she has a potential partner, but something feels off. It's not only that she is being pursued by a lynch crowd, which makes me uncomfortable. Isn't he married? When the Russells' dinner finally takes place that evening, the Duke only makes Mrs. Winterton's injuries worse by telling everyone that he is positive that Mrs. Russell's Newport will live up to his expectations. Winterton puts him on the spot with, "But not our Newport." But Bertha diverts his attention by introducing him to Gladys, Tessa Farmiga, who may be the main reason Bertha is giving this stupid party. Bertha places Gladys next to the Duke at dinner because she thinks that Gladys marrying a wealthy English Duke would make a grand entrance. However, dinner is cut short when Watson notices that Schneider, the guest chef, is adding something to the sauce for the first course. They discover the food is tainted and refuse to serve it. Watson then tells Church after he sees Peter conversing with Schneider, telling Peter not to serve any of the visitors in case he accidentally spills hot soup on the Duke. Mrs. Winterton's eyes flit around during all of these little adjustments, finally understanding her sabotage is failing. After the meal, Mr. Winterton says, "You have to admit that it was a good dinner," but Mrs. Winterton, whose skills would be better served at Ye Old Comedy Cellar, says sourly, "I wouldn't admit it if they tore my fingernails off to make me." After the four servants toast to their achievement and the night is finished, Warden says, "We thwarted Miss Turner's revenge. Really, all I want in life is to celebrate the little victories that the help achieves. I'm infatuated with this and Jack's strong connection to his clockmaking." Ada's wedding is the next day. Agnes descends the home staircase to bid them farewell, telling them that she hasn't changed her mind about going to the wedding. But Marion has asked Dashiell to give Ada away. Agnes doesn't know she had to let this one go until her butler Bannister says, "I'm going to support Miss Ada, and I urge you to do the same, or you may regret it for the rest of your life." There are many friends and family members at the church, including Oscar, who tells Ada he wants to give her away. Ada understands that the people in her town still adore her, even in Agnes' absence. Her chef, Mrs. Bauer, tells her, "You've earned this," and she begins to truly believe it. Naturally, Agnes makes her grand entrance at the beginning of the vows, with the church doors slamming behind her. As Agnes takes a seat in Oscar's pew, she and Ada exchange a silent smile. Agnes's life is now ready to begin again, just as Ada's is.